Lied. Longform today. Time for me to explain my trick become human disease. With that said, all art shown in this video is mine as well as any gacha designs. And on top of that, any art bases used will be shown as well as the art. However, I did find my art bases on Pinterest though, so do with that what you will. Also, any triggering topics will be stated at the start of each section along with a timestamp to after this section. Without further ado, Michaela Anderson. Quick trigger warning, this section will have mentions of family death, alcohol, fighting others as a form of self-harm, mentions of overdosing on pain pills, minor references to Russian roulette, suicide, and suicidal ideation. Timestamp will be given to the point where you can skip this section if needed. Also, as I further ado, as some might say, I must mention that this is just backstory and basic character information, up until the chapter partners. There will be a part 2 with the full story retold in Myoses. Michaela Anderson is a 14-year-old girl who is the daughter of Lieutenant Hank Anderson. She was born on December 12, 2024, and was 5 years older than Cole. Before Cole's death, she and Hank were close, and Michaela was happy. She also used to be very passionate about her interests and studies. Her fighting spirit was also more focused on arguing than actual fistfights and was a lot less volatile. And then the car crash happens. Michaela was 11 at the time of Cole's death, and she was sick at home at the time. But after she heard of Cole's death, her mental state quickly deteriorated. She became more reserved, irritable, distant, and cynical. Soon after this, her penchant for fighting others as a way for punishing herself in a belief that she should have been the one to die in a crash and not Cole began, and her fighting spirit mutated into a more volatile, aggressive version of what it once was. This, mixed with Hank's drinking, caused the two to become increasingly distant, haunting their house like two ghosts and keeping to themselves. However, despite their distance, Hank is still extremely protective of Michaela, and she is part of the reason as to why he hasn't just pulled the trigger yet. Vice versa for Michaela, Hank still being alive is part of why she hasn't just overdosed on pain pills yet. Moving on, Michaela is also very protective of those she sees as her family. Another common reason as to why she keeps getting into fights is because people keep insulting her family to get to her. They end up getting their ass beat by a 14-year-old after that. She also becomes shocked, angered, or even repulsed whenever she sees someone being treated unfairly, e.g. Connor killing any androids, shooting the Tracy's, having the most extreme reaction, or seeing/hearing about the androids fight for freedom when you have a sympathetic supportive public opinion. Michaela also dislikes the idea of religion, believing it to be pointless and just a way to manipulate others. All in all, Michaela Anderson as a character is a distant, aloof, snarky, and socially challenged girl who can come off as aggressive at times, but has a strong drive for justice and protecting her family, and is incredibly smart and observant, finding small details that often lead to important discoveries and investigations despite her somewhat unstable mental state. Also, random fact, she's the first character I made for this game. Moving forward, Dr. O'Reilly and his experiments. Quick warnings, this section contains topics of abuse and manipulation, as well as minor spoilers for the current chapter Slot Co. I'm grouping Dr. O'Reilly and his android experiments together because they are a major part of the side story we would only hear about if they were canon. There are also a couple of new concepts I get to introduce: induced deviation and manipulation via deviation. Dr. O'Reilly himself, whose name I will not reveal because haha funny lore and mystery, is most referenced during Kara's route, during her story, and somewhat in Marcus and Connor's stories as well. O'Reilly is often described as a visionary and someone who is paving the way for android psychology thanks to his discoveries about how deviancy works and how to better take control of deviance. However, O'Reilly is also often described as cold, distant, manipulative, evil, and just plain rude, especially when talked about the android O'Reilly mainly experiments with, Vex. I want to have a lot more mystery surrounding O'Reilly, mainly because it saves me from having to build too much lore, but also because I feel like keeping O'Reilly shrouded in mystery and never truly making him an appearance, as cliche as it is, would be an interesting character concept to experiment with, especially as I write the script for this video and build out the lore for my characters through this script, seeing how far I could push these concepts and characters and work them into the plot without completely changing the core of the game. Anyway, onto the concepts O'Reilly discovered when it comes to deviancy. For this, we'll start with induced deviancy. At its heart, induced deviancy is a human intentionally causing deviancy within an android. Often this is caused by damaging the android, giving it instructions that go against its common sense, making it realize how wrong things are, or manually reprogramming it in a way that causes the error of deviancy. This form of deviancy also makes the android easier to manipulate, especially if you manually reprogrammed it. However, since deviancy is intentionally induced with this method, Dr. O'Reilly, in the report he released to the public, states it's not real deviancy. Although Dr. O'Reilly is a bitch and we should not believe him. Honestly, the only real difference that induced deviancy has from real deviancy is that it's caused by a human as the intended result. I just thought a concept like this would be a cool, fun, in-universe idea to mess with. Anyway, on to another important concept that O'Reilly discovered: manipulation via deviation. This is basically what Zlatko does when he manipulates deviants into getting their memories reset. It's taking advantage of an android's deviated state, making it do what you want with the promise of freedom or something along those lines. This one is still a relatively new concept I have, so I don't have much to describe it yet. My main motivation for adding an official name for taking advantage of a deviant in this sense is because I wanted to expand upon the ways Zlatko manipulates deviants and how other people would try to take advantage of deviants themselves, especially with Dr. O'Reilly's research on induced deviancy and his research on manipulation via deviancy coming into public perception. Also, this is the part where O'Reilly being an absolute bitch comes into play. Aside from him creating a deviant via abuse. Now, moving on to Vex, Dr. O'Reilly's main escape deviant who came to Jericho around the time Crossroads takes place. After reaching Jericho, Vex manages to meet Marcus, Whitlock, and gets to explain his situation, explaining Dr. O'Reilly's abuse and giving the player the most detail as to the monster that O'Reilly is in order to let Marcus know how O'Reilly's test subjects might act just as a precaution, and asking Marcus to treat them with as much respect as he would any other android. When we meet Vex as Marcus, they would come off as shy, nervous, and defensive, thanks to past experiences with Dr. O'Reilly. Also, I'm sorry that all of this is so underdeveloped. I don't know what else to do for this, sadly. Also, I feel like the most information for Vex would come up during the retelling of the story, and not, like, basic backstory. In other words, I feel like I'd come up with more, details for Vex while I'm rewriting the story and basically giving different bits to them. Moving on, Jaden Fowler. This section contains a brief mention of family death, but other than that, I think this is the lightest character backstory I've written. She's a 16-year-old niece of Captain Jeffrey Fowler. If you don't remember who Jeffrey Fowler is, he's the guy who yells at Hank during the chapter Waiting for Hank. He's apparently an old friend of Hank's, or at least they've known each other for a long time. He is in charge of the Detroit City Police Department. But without further ado, let's go into detail about Jaden Fowler herself. Jaden is an old friend of McKella's, and they've known each other since elementary school. Jaden is also the student council president for their school, and school has given her some disciplinary power over students, being able to give them conduct marks and ask permission to assign detention. I know that realistically this wouldn't happen, but this is in the future, and a fictional school in a fictional universe, so as long as it fits with the pre-existing canon, I can do whatever I want. Anyway, Jaden tends to be a strict, no funny business type character, sticking to the rules and making sure that her fellow classmates abide by them as well, a trait learned from her uncle, which McKella begrudgingly expects her for. that. However, Jaden is also a faithful friend and will find obscure loopholes in the rules to help Michaela despite her frequent fights or outbursts. Despite her respect and liking for Michaela, Jaden cannot always tolerate her. Whenever Michaela starts an argument over something she doesn't want to do, Jaden often forces her into doing it with empty threats of detention or other school punishment. Faced with a deviant android investigation and Michaela being allowed out of school through some obscure loophole in the rules if she does the work provided online, Jaden and her uncle hope that this will bring the Andersons to react and become the people they once were. Also, because I can't make a character without something sad, Jaden's parents died and she lives with an uncle. And last, and absolutely least, Cherish. Also, I lied. This is the lightest section of the video. This section has no triggers at all. For once, I'm instantly disproving the fact that I can't make a character without something sad. Cherish is genuinely just a 15-year-old who follows Gavin around and who lets her because it pisses Hank off. It's gotten to the point where Cherish has started taking after Gavin. Michaela hates it because she has to go to school with Cherish. Anytime Cherish and Michaela interact unsupervised, it always starts an argument. Hank has had break up multiple fights. I don't actually have much on her. She was just designed to be parallel to Gavin, but for Michaela, I'm going to be honest, and for haha funny petty arguments. So that's it for the characters. I hope you enjoyed the video. It has taken years off my life. Also, I hope you like the basic ass PNG thingy I'm using for this because Allight Motion won't let me export without ads. Also, I might add more sprites for this soon, so stay tuned for that, I guess. Anyway, we're going back to the Class C outro. October out.